This is the Youth Baseball Edge podcast with Rob Tong, session number 1.
Get in the know and get the edge. It's the Youth Baseball Edge podcast. And now, your host, Rob Tong.
What's up, everybody? Rob Tong here, and I am so excited to finally launch this podcast with this first session. I greatly appreciate everybody's support. Some of you have been asking me when the podcast would go live, and here it is. Thank you so much for listening and making listening to this podcast part of your commute, your workout routine, or whatever. Today's session is going to be a little bit different from the norm. I'm going to be talking today a little bit about who I am, my coaching philosophy, and what you can expect from the show, how it's different from other podcasts, and what it will do for you. Now, I don't want this to be a waste of your time. I want to get rid of all the fluff that I hear in a lot of podcasts and being a billboard for other people's stuff. I'm a straight shooter, and I like to ask the tough questions. We'll talk about what works and what doesn't work. I want to give you practical, actionable content that you can put to use right away and build your coaching repertoire. Now, before I get into my background, let me talk briefly about the tagline of the show. If you noticed at the beginning of the podcast, the tagline is, get in the know and get the edge. And the reason that I chose that tagline is because there's a lot of misinformation in baseball. What I found when I did research about how to teach baseball is that people will say often contradictory things. So if you want to be a successful youth baseball coach, a large portion of that is going to have to come from knowing what you're going to teach your kids. It's going to involve you taking the time to study the game, study how to be a better coach, not just how to teach how to hit, run, and throw, but also how to teach the other facets of the game, like the mental game, or how to be a good teammate, how to handle adversity, and just how to learn to love this great game of baseball. Coaching youth baseball is not for the lazy. It takes hard work, and it takes knowing the right things to teach. So when you put in the hard work to know the right things, then you will get in the know. And when you do get in the know, you will get the edge when you're coaching your team. So I think that tagline, get in the know and get the edge, encapsulates perfectly how I'm trying to serve you with this podcast. And as a side note, my wife came up with that tagline because I'm just not that bright to come up with stuff like that. So again, my name is Rob Tong. I started coaching 10 years ago, which means I've been coaching for a decade now. Wow, it's hard to believe. I'm just a regular guy. When I started, I knew only what I saw and heard on TV, and I knew that wouldn't be enough to be able to coach kids. So I started researching the heck out of it. I was reading as many books as I could, watching tons of videos, and just doing as much research as I could about how to teach baseball. But the return on the investment, all those hours studying how to coach, it's tremendous. So many parents have been so appreciative of how their kids just love the game so much more after they were on my team. It's not just about making a positive impact in your own kid's life, but also making a positive impact in every kid under your umbrella. And I want to pass that on and help you succeed in leading your own team, because you, as the coach, have a huge yet often under-recognized and underappreciated responsibility in leading 13 to 16 impressionable kids. Now, I have 5 boys. My oldest is 15, and my youngest is just 1 year old. So I'll probably be coaching for another 20 years. But I love it, and I love sharing my tips from the successful coaching career that I've had so far so that I can help others. You'll see that also on my website, youthbaseballedge.com, where I share my successes and my failures. But there's a lot of other people who know a lot more about coaching youth baseball than I do, and that's where this podcast comes into play. On this podcast, I'm going to be interviewing experts in youth baseball who will share their own successful strategies with you so you can be a successful coach in a non-sleazy way where it's not all about your win-loss record, but it's about helping your kids love the great game of baseball. Now, in terms of how the show is going to work, a normal episode will come out every week on Tuesdays, and it will be anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes in length. This is, I think, the sweet spot in being long enough to get in-depth in the content without dragging on. And usually I'll stick to one topic in each podcast about something about youth baseball, and I'll try to cover a wide diversity of youth baseball coaching topics from week to week. From the physical skills like hitting and pitching to the all-important mental game to the rarely discussed topic of strategy, to practice organization, to using sabermetrics or not, and much more. So sometimes it'll be like this, where it's just you and me. But most of the time, I'll be interviewing an authority so I can dig deeper into a topic and we can learn together from the best in youth baseball. I'll also do a little kind of about me segment with each guest where I ask each guest some fun facts about themselves so you can get a little inside peek into who our guest is. But the bottom line is, I hope you'll look forward to the next podcast session because you will have learned helpful, actionable tips from the last session that you listened to. And if you want to get even more practical resources, you can go to my website, www.youthbaseballedge.com. If you want to say hi, you can go to facebook.com/youthbaseballedge, or you can tweet me. My handle is @edgybaseball. If you say hi, I promise I'll say hi back. If you listen to the other Youth Baseball Edge podcast episodes and you like them, then please subscribe and leave an honest review because it will help the show immensely. So that's a wrap for session 1. It's kind of quick and dirty. It's, again, just a little bit different from the normal episode. Hope that you enjoyed listening to it. Thank you so much for listening to this inaugural session of the Youth Baseball Edge podcast. In session 2, we'll take a fascinating tour into the psychology of youth baseball with Pulitzer Prize winning author and youth baseball coach Joe Hallinan. Lots of great lessons there on a subject that's rarely discussed in youth baseball. So until then, be blessed and be a blessing. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Youth Baseball Edge podcast. You can find us at youthbaseballedge.com.